The gun was already at Emily Johnson's temple before she heard him enter the room. "Don't move," a voice said in English, smooth, amused, like he was enjoying this. "Don't breathe. Don't even think about running, because I promise you won't make it to the door." Emily's hands froze on the open safe, her heart slamming against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack bone. She'd been in Seoul for exactly 11 days, and in those 11 days, she'd learned 3 important things. Korean winter was colder than Lagos ever got. Soju gave you the worst hangovers imaginable. And breaking into Kwon Jun-seok's private estate on Christmas Eve was the stupidest thing she'd ever done in her 26 catastrophic years of life. "Turn around," the voice commanded. "Slowly. And keep your hands where I can see them, or this gets messy." Emily turned, hands raised, and came face to face with the man who'd haunted her nightmares for 3 months, ever since the day his organization murdered her brother in Lagos and made it look like a robbery gone wrong. Kwon Jun-seok was even more devastating in person than in the photographs she'd obsessively studied. Tall, perfectly tailored even at midnight, with a face that belonged in movies except for the thin white scar cutting down his cheek and the eyes that held absolutely no mercy. He wasn't pointing a gun at her. He was pointing a finger, shaped like a gun, pressed against her temple, and somehow that was more terrifying than an actual weapon. "Bang," he said softly, and smiled when Emily flinched. "Just kidding. You should see your face right now." Then he lowered his hand, stepped back, and looked her up and down with the kind of assessment that made Emily feel stripped bare despite being fully clothed in her black tactical gear. "You're shorter than I expected," Kwon said. "And younger. And definitely not Russian Mafia, which is who I was told was planning to rob me tonight. So who are you, and why are you in my house holding my property?" Emily's mind raced. She'd planned for getting caught, had a cover story ready, fake credentials, a whole identity built around being a contract operative hired by his rivals. But standing in front of Kwon Jun-seok, seeing the intelligence in those dark eyes, she knew he'd see through any lie she told. So she did something reckless. She told him the truth. "My name is Emily Johnson," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "And I'm here because 3 months ago, your people killed my brother in Lagos. Shot him in the street like a dog, and left him to bleed out while I watched from across the road. So I tracked your organization back to Seoul, spent everything I had getting here, and broke into your house to find proof that you ordered his death. Because when I have that proof, I'm going to destroy you." The silence that followed was so complete Emily could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the Christmas music playing somewhere distant in the house, could hear snow hitting the windows like whispered secrets. Kwon stared at her. Then he did something Emily didn't expect. He laughed. Not a cruel laugh or a mocking laugh, but genuine amusement, like she'd just told the best joke he'd heard all year. He laughed until tears gathered in his eyes, until he had to lean against his desk for support, until Emily's confusion turned to anger hot enough to burn. "What's so funny?" she demanded. "I just told you I'm here to destroy you, and you're laughing?" "I'm laughing," Kwon said, wiping his eyes, "because this is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in years. Do you have any idea how many people want to destroy me, Miss Johnson? How many death threats I get daily? How many amateur assassins and hired guns and revenge-seeking relatives I deal with every month? But you," he pointed at her, still grinning, "you broke into my house on Christmas Eve, triggered every silent alarm I have, and just confessed to planning my destruction while I'm standing right here. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and I genuinely can't tell which." "Both," Emily said flatly. "It's definitely both." Kwon's smile widened. "I like you. I shouldn't, but I do. You've got guts. Terrible survival instincts, but guts." He moved to his desk, sat on the edge, and looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "So here's the problem, Miss Johnson. I don't know who your brother was, and I definitely didn't order any hits in Lagos 3 months ago. My organization doesn't operate in West Africa, too much competition, not enough profit. Which means either you have the wrong person, or someone used my name to cover their own crime." Emily's world tilted. "You're lying." "I don't lie," Kwon said simply. "Lying is for people who are afraid of consequences. I'm not afraid of anything. So no, I didn't kill your brother. But he held up a finger. If someone is using my name to commit murders, I want to know who. That's a problem. A big problem. And you, he pointed at her again, you're going to help me figure it out. Why would I help you? Emily demanded. Because I'm not letting you leave, Kwon said, and just like that, the amusement drained from his voice, replaced by something cold and absolute. You broke into my house, Miss Johnson. You saw my safe, my security, my private space. Even if I believed you'd just walk away and forget all this, my reputation can't afford to let you go. So here's what's going to happen. You're staying here as my guest until I figure out who killed your brother and why they used my name. You want revenge? Fine. I want answers. We help each other, and maybe we both get what we want. Or you can refuse, and I'll have my men escort you to a much less comfortable room where previous house guests have stayed. Your choice. Emily looked at him, this man who might be lying, might be telling the truth, might be the devil himself, and tried to calculate her odds. Fight? She'd lose. Run? She'd be caught before she reached the door. Trust him? Insane. But what other option did she have? If I stay, Emily said carefully, I want access to your files. Your records. Everything about your organization's activities 3 months ago. Done, Kwon said immediately. On one condition, you tell me everything about your brother's death. Every detail, every name, every piece of information you have. And if I help you and discover you've been lying? Emily asked. If I find proof you did order my brother's death? Kwon's smile returned, sharp as broken glass. Then I'll let you kill me yourself. Fair. It wasn't fair. Nothing about this was fair. But Emily was trapped with no leverage and being offered the one thing she'd come to Seoul to find, answers. Fine, she said. I'll stay. But the second I find what I'm looking for, I'm gone. We'll see, Kwon said, and something in his tone made Emily's skin prickle. He stood, walked to the door, and called something in Korean. 2 men appeared, large, professional, clearly dangerous. Take Miss Johnson to the East Wing guest suite, Kwon instructed in English. Make sure she has everything she needs. Post guards outside her door, for her protection, of course. Of course, Emily said sarcastically. Kwon looked back at her. Welcome to my home, Emily Johnson. Merry Christmas. I have a feeling the next few days are going to be very interesting for both of us. The guest suite was obscenely beautiful, and Emily hated it. She paced the room like a caged animal, testing windows, examining doors, looking for any possible escape route. Everything was locked, reinforced, impossible. She was well and truly trapped. An older Korean woman entered with food. Mr. Kwon thought you might be hungry, she said carefully. I'm Mrs. Cho. If you need anything. I need to leave, Emily said. Can't help with that. Mrs. Cho set down the tray. But I can bring you warm clothes, books, whatever makes staying bearable. After she left, Emily stared at the food, her stomach growling despite everything. She checked it carefully, probably useless if they wanted her poisoned, and ate mechanically. The dumplings were perfect, which somehow made everything worse. She was finishing the soup when her door opened without warning. Kwon walked in like he owned the place. Which he did. Ever heard of knocking? Emily demanded. This is my house, Kwon said, settling into the chair across from her. I don't knock in my own house. Now talk. Tell me about your brother. Everything. Emily wanted to refuse, to maintain some kind of power in this situation. But she'd made a deal, and besides, some part of her needed to tell this story. Needed someone to hear it. His name was Samuel Johnson, she began, her voice rough. 23 years old. Engineering student at University of Lagos. Smart, funny, kinda all the things I'm not. He was walking home from night classes when 2 men stopped him. I was across the street, coming to meet him. I saw them approach. Saw him try to run. Heard them say the White Lotus sends his regards before they shot him. 3 times. Then they walked away like they'd just finished ordering coffee. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs to still them. I ran to him. Held him while he died. He looked at me and said, Emmy, don't cry. Those were his last words. Emmy, don't cry. And then he was gone. Kwon was silent for a long moment. 3 shots. What kind of guns? Emily closed her eyes, remembering. Handguns. Not automatic. Two different guns, I heard different sounds. And they used my name specifically? The White Lotus. Yes, that's how I found you. I asked questions, paid people, followed the trail back to Seoul. To you. Kwon stood and paced to the window. I don't use partners for hits. One shooter, professional, clean. Two men with different guns suggests amateurs. And announcing my name before pulling the trigger, that's theater. Someone wanted you to know who was responsible. Or wanted you to think you knew. So you're saying someone framed you, Emily said. Used your name to kill my brother. Yes. He turned to face her. Which means someone has a problem with me they're trying to solve by turning people like you into weapons. That's clever and dangerous and needs to be dealt with before it becomes a pattern. Tomorrow we start investigating, Kwon continued. I'll show you my organization's records from 3 months ago. You'll see I was in Seoul, in meetings with witnesses. Meanwhile, I'll reach out to contacts in Lagos. And if you're lying? Emily challenged. If this is all manipulation? Kwon crossed the room in 3 strides. Emily found herself backed against the headboard as he leaned over her, hands braced on either side, caging her in. He was close enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes, could smell his cologne, could feel the heat of him. I don't play games with people's grief, he said quietly. I know what it's like to lose someone you love. I know how it burns everything else away until revenge is the only thing that makes sense. So no, this isn't a game. This is me finding out who used my name to kill your brother so I can introduce them to consequences. They stared at each other, inches apart, and Emily felt something shift, not attraction exactly, but recognition. Like seeing someone who understood the weight you carried. Okay, she whispered. I believe you. For now. Kwon smiled, something almost gentle. That's all I'm asking. He pulled back and headed for the door. But he paused at the threshold. One more thing. You said you watched your brother die. Why didn't you go to him immediately? Why did you wait across the street? The question cut deep. Emily had asked herself the same thing every day for 3 months. Because I was afraid, she admitted. Because I heard the guns and I froze. Because by the time I unfroze and ran to him, he was already dying. Because I'm a coward who let her brother die alone. Or, Kwon said softly, you're a survivor who lived to make sure his death mattered. We'll see which one you are. Then he was gone, and Emily was alone with her grief, and the terrible understanding that maybe the man she'd come to destroy might be the only person who could help her. The next morning arrived with weak winter sunlight and Mrs. Cho bringing breakfast. Emily had barely slept, her mind spinning with questions, and the memory of Kwon's eyes inches from hers. Mr. Kwon says to dress warmly, Mrs. Cho announced. He's taking you somewhere. Where? He didn't say. But he says don't try to run. His men are everywhere and Seoul is very cold for running. 20 minutes later, Emily was dressed in clothes from the mysteriously well-stocked closet, jeans, sweater, a coat that fit perfectly and probably cost more than she'd ever owned. Kwon was waiting in the foyer, looking unfairly good in dark clothing that made him seem even more dangerous. Where are we going? Emily demanded. To see my records, Kwon said. I keep certain files at a separate location. More secure than here. Come. The car ride was tense and silent. Emily watched Seoul pass by, a city waking up on Christmas morning, families and couples, and the kind of normal life she'd left behind when Samuel died. The driver navigated through increasingly empty streets until they reached Gangnam, pulling into an underground garage beneath a sleek office building. Kwon led her to a private elevator that required his fingerprint to operate. They descended further than seemed possible, and when the doors opened, Emily found herself in what looked like a high-tech vault, servers, filing systems, security that would make banks jealous. Welcome to my real office, Kwon said. Everything important happens here. He moved to a computer terminal and pulled up files. 3 months ago. September. Here's my schedule. Meetings with city officials, business deals, a visit from Tokyo partners. All documented, all witnessed. I was in Seoul the entire time. Never left the country. Emily studied the records. They looked legitimate, timestamps, photographs, witness signatures. But anyone with resources could fake this. Show me your phone records, she demanded. If you ordered the hit, you would have made calls. Kwon raised an eyebrow but complied. He pulled up phone logs, scrolled to September. Look for yourself. Emily scanned the numbers. Hundreds of calls, but nothing to Nigeria or surrounding countries. Nothing that looked suspicious on the dates around Samuel's death. This could all be fabricated, she said, but her conviction was wavering. It could be, Kwon agreed. But it's not. I didn't kill your brother, Emily. Someone else did. Someone who wanted you to think I was responsible. Why? Emily's voice cracked. Why would someone do that? To turn you into a weapon, Kwon said. To aim you at me and pull the trigger. You're smart, capable, clearly dangerous when motivated. Someone saw that and decided to use your grief against me. Emily sank into a nearby chair, the weight of 3 months crashing down on her. If you didn't kill Samuel, then I've wasted 3 months. Spent everything I had. Came to Seoul for nothing. Not nothing, Kwon said quietly. He crouched in front of her, bringing them to eye level. You came here for justice. We're going to get it. Just not the way you expected. His hand covered hers, warm, surprisingly gentle. Emily should have pulled away but found herself gripping back, desperately needing something solid to hold onto as her certainty dissolved. I need to know who really killed him, she whispered. I need to make them pay. We will, Kwon promised. But first we need to figure out who profits from you thinking I'm guilty. Who benefits from you trying to destroy me? Emily's mind started working again, pushing through grief to logic. Someone who wants you gone. A rival. Someone who'd benefit from me succeeding where others failed. Exactly. Kwon stood. I have enemies, lots of them. But using a random Nigerian engineering student to get to me? That's specific. That suggests someone who knows Lagos, knows you, knows me. Someone connected to both worlds. I don't know anyone in Seoul, Emily said. I didn't before Samuel died. But Samuel might have. Kwon moved back to the computer. You said he was an engineering student. What kind of engineering? Software. Computer systems. He was brilliant with code. Kwon's fingers flew across the keyboard. 3 months ago, I was in the middle of a major tech acquisition. Buying a cybersecurity firm with contracts across Africa. The previous owner wasn't happy about being bought out. There was resistance. He pulled up files, photographs. Emily's breath caught. One of the photos showed a corporate meeting. And in the background, visible through a doorway, was Samuel. That's him, she breathed. That's my brother. What was he doing at your meeting? Kwon zoomed in on the image metadata. This was taken at Tech Solutions Limited in Lagos. The firm I was acquiring. Your brother must have worked there, probably an intern or contractor. Emily's world tilted again. Samuel never mentioned working for anyone. He was just in school. Students need money, Kwon said. He probably freelanced, didn't think it was important enough to mention. But if he was working for Tech Solutions, and if the owner blamed me for the acquisition destroying his business, then he might have killed Samuel to frame you, Emily finished. Use me to get revenge. His name is Chin-wei, Kwon said, pulling up more files. Chinese-Nigerian businessman. Ran Tech Solutions for 15 years before I bought him out. He disappeared after the sale, took his payout and vanished. But if he's still in Lagos, if he's been watching you, he'd know I'd come after you, Emily said. He'd know I'd spend everything to get here. He'd know I'd try to destroy you to avenge Samuel. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Samuel hadn't been a random target. He'd been murdered specifically to weaponize Emily, to turn her grief into Kwon's destruction. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories. I need proof, Emily said. Before I believe this completely. I need actual evidence Chin-wei killed my brother. Then we get it, Kwon said. I'll make calls, activate resources. If Chin-wei killed Samuel, we'll find proof. And then, something dark flickered in his eyes. Then we'll discuss what happens to people who use innocent students as pawns. The next 3 days blurred together in a frenzy of investigation. Kwon's resources were terrifying. He had contacts everywhere, people who owed him favors, intelligence networks that could dig up anything. Emily watched him work with grudging admiration. Whatever else he was, Kwon Jun-seok was formidable. They found Chinwei's financial records first. Large sums moving from accounts in China to Lagos, then nothing for 2 months, then a sudden withdrawal the day before Samuel died. Then they found the surveillance footage. A security camera outside Samuel's university had captured 2 men following him. The quality was poor, but facial recognition software matched them to Chinwei's former employees, men who'd been fired after the Tech Solutions acquisition. Then came the communications. Encrypted messages between Chinwei and his hired men, discussing the target and sending a message to Seoul. The messages were in code, but Kwon's tech people cracked them easily. And finally, the smoking gun, a voice recording. Chinwei on the phone with someone, saying the girl will go after Kwon. She'll use everything she has to destroy him. And while he's distracted dealing with her, we'll move on the rest of his holdings. The White Lotus will finally fall, and it'll be his own arrogance that kills him. Emily listened to the recording 3 times, her hands shaking with rage so intense it felt like fire under her skin. He killed Samuel just to aim me at you, she said. My brother died because some bitter businessman wanted revenge, and I was convenient. Yes, Kwon said quietly. Where is he? Emily's voice was deadly calm. Where is Chinwei right now? Lagos. Still there. Probably waiting to hear if his plan worked, if you managed to get to me. Kwon paused. What do you want to do? Emily met his eyes. I want him dead. I want to watch him die. I want him to know exactly why. Then we go to Lagos, Kwon said. Together. We find Chinwei and we make sure he understands the consequences of using the people I care about as weapons. The casual way he said people I care about should have meant nothing. They'd known each other 4 days. But it landed like a punch to Emily's chest, the implication that somehow, impossibly, she'd become someone Kwon cared about. Why are you helping me? She asked. You have the evidence. You could just give it to me and let me go. Why come to Lagos yourself? Kwon was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, because Chinwei used my name to kill an innocent student. That makes it personal. And because he stopped, something vulnerable flickering across his face, because I don't want you to face this alone. Revenge is cold comfort when you have no one to share it with. I know. I've had plenty of revenge in my life, and it never made me feel less alone. There it was again, that glimpse of something human beneath the crime lord facade. Emily felt herself softening despite every instinct screaming that this man was dangerous. When do we leave? She asked. Tomorrow night. I have arrangements to make. Weapons to acquire. People to contact. Kwon stood. Until then, you should rest. Lagos will be complicated. He moved toward the door, then paused. Emily. When we find Chinwei, when you have him in front of you, are you prepared to do what needs to be done? Killing someone isn't like the movies. It changes you. I need to know you can handle it. Emily thought of Samuel's face as he died, of 3 months of grief and rage, of the recording she'd heard of Chinwei casually discussing her brother's murder like it was a business transaction. I can handle it, she said. The question is whether you can handle who I become after. Kwon smiled, that sharp, dangerous smile that made him look like the monster everyone said he was. I think I can handle any version of you, Emily Johnson. That's part of what makes you interesting. The flight to Lagos was long and tense. Kwon had chartered a private jet, which Emily tried not to think about, the obscene wealth required to casually fly across the world for revenge. They sat across from each other in leather seats, and for hours neither spoke, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, as Africa came into view below, Kwon broke the silence. Tell me about Lagos. About your life before all this. Emily looked at him, surprised. Why? Because I want to know. Because we're about to walk into your world, and I should understand it. Because he paused, because I want to understand you. So Emily told him. About growing up in Seoul, about her mother who sold fabric in Balagan Market, about her father who drove Danfo buses until the day he didn't come home. About learning to be tough, because Lagos didn't tolerate weakness, about protecting Samuel, because he was gentle in a city that punished gentleness. He was everything good about our family, she said. I was the fighter, the survivor. He was the dreamer, the builder. He was going to do something important, help people, make things better. And Chin-wei killed him like he was nothing. He wasn't nothing, Kwon said firmly. And Chin-wei is going to understand that very clearly very soon. They landed as the sun was setting, Lagos spreading beneath them in all its chaotic glory. Emily felt something loosen in her chest. She was home. Battered, grieving, changed, but home. Kwon's local contacts met them at a private hangar with vehicles and weapons. Emily watched him switch seamlessly into command mode, issuing orders in English and, what sounded like Mandarin, coordinating movements with military precision. This was the White Lotus everyone feared, cold, efficient, absolutely in control. Chin-wei is staying in Victoria Island. Kwon's contact reported a Nigerian man who looked at Emily with curiosity. Expensive hotel. Heavy security. He's not hiding, but he's careful. Good, Kwon said. Careful people are predictable. What's his routine? Dinner at hotel restaurant every night. 9 p.m. Always same table, same guards. Then back to his suite by 11. Kwon glanced at Emily. Tonight? Tonight, she confirmed. They spent the next hours preparing. Kwon's people acquired formal clothing suitable for an upscale restaurant. Emily changed into a dress that made her look elegant and harmless, the perfect disguise. Kwon wore a dark suit that transformed him from crime lord to businessman. Remember, he said as they drove to Victoria Island, we're just a couple having dinner. We sit, we eat, we observe. When Chin-wei goes back to his suite, we follow. We corner him somewhere private. Then you do what you came here to do. And his guards? Emily asked. Leave them to me, Kwon said, and something in his voice suggested those guards would not be a problem for long. The hotel was exactly the kind of place Chin-wei would choose, expensive, ostentatious, catering to people who had money and wanted everyone to know it. The restaurant was all white tablecloths and soft lighting and the quiet murmur of wealthy diners. And there, at a corner table, sat Chin-wei. He was smaller than Emily expected, middle-aged and soft around the edges, the kind of man who'd built his power through money rather than physical strength. He ate with two large men standing behind him, security, clearly former military by the way they scanned the room constantly. Emily's hands clenched under the table. 3 months of grief crystallized into pure, focused rage. This man had killed Samuel. Had used her brother's death as a chess move in some pathetic revenge scheme. Had tried to weaponize her grief. Breathe, Kwon said softly. We wait. We watch. We move when the moment is right. They ordered food Emily couldn't taste, made conversation she didn't hear, maintained the fiction of being normal diners while watching their target. Chin-wei seemed relaxed, unaware, probably confident his plan had worked and the White Lotus was currently dealing with an angry Nigerian woman's failed revenge attempt. He had no idea that angry woman was sitting 30 feet away, planning his death. At exactly 11 p.m., Chin-wei stood to leave. His guards moved with him, maintaining formation. Kwon caught Emily's eye and nodded slightly. They waited 60 seconds, then followed. The elevator was crowded, hotel guests heading to their rooms, tired and eager for sleep. Chin-wei's guards were professional, keeping people at a distance but not making a scene. Kwon and Emily slipped in just as the doors closed, standing at the back, invisible in the crowd. Chin-wei got off at the 23rd floor. So did Kwon and Emily, along with a few other guests. The hallway was long and carpeted, doors on either side, cameras in the corners. Chin-wei headed left, his guards flanking him. Kwon's hand found Emily's, squeezed once. Then he moved. What happened next took maybe 30 seconds, but felt like hours. Kwon approached the guards with the kind of casual confidence that made them hesitate, just long enough for him to strike. One guard went down with a blow to the throat. The other reached for his weapon, but Kwon was faster, disarming him with brutal efficiency. Chin-wei spun around, eyes going wide with recognition and fear. You're the White Lotus. But she was supposed to, you shouldn't be. Alive? Kwon finished. Destroyed? Whatever outcome you planned when you killed Samuel Johnson and sent his sister to Seoul. Sorry to disappoint. He grabbed Chin-wei by the collar and dragged him toward the nearest hotel room, the one whose keycard Kwon's people had secured earlier. Emily followed, her heart pounding, adrenaline singing through her veins. The room was generic hotel luxury, king bed, sitting area, windows overlooking Lagos at night. Kwon threw Chen Wei into a chair, and Emily watched the man who'd killed her brother look at her with dawning horror. You're Emily, he stammered. Samuel's sister. You were supposed to kill Kwon. That was the plan. You were supposed to. To destroy him for you, Emily finished. To be your weapon. To do your dirty work while you sat safe in Lagos counting your money. I didn't, it wasn't. Chen Wei was sweating now, looking between Emily and Kwon like a trapped animal. The acquisition destroyed my business. Everything I built. Kwon took it all. I just wanted revenge. The boy was collateral. Wrong place, wrong time. His name was Samuel, Emily said, and her voice was ice. He was 23. He had dreams. He was kind and brilliant, and he died because you needed someone to blame for your own failures. She pulled out the gun Kwon had given her, compact, deadly, surprisingly heavy in her hands. She'd never held a gun before today. Had never wanted to. But now, pointing it at Chen Wei's chest, she felt nothing but cold certainty. You said the White Lotus sends his regards when your men killed my brother, Emily continued. So let me return the message. Emily Johnson sends her regards. Chen Wei's eyes went wide. Wait, please, I have money. I can pay you. I can. You can die, Emily said, and pulled the trigger. The sound was impossibly loud in the closed room. Chen Wei jerked back, eyes shocked, hands clutching at his chest where blood bloomed like a terrible flower. He tried to speak, but only blood came out. Then he slumped forward, and Emily knew he was dead. She lowered the gun, hands shaking violently. She'd done it. She'd killed the man who killed Samuel. She'd gotten her revenge. So why did she feel so empty? Kwon took the gun from her trembling hands. Come. We need to leave before security responds to the gunshot. They moved quickly, efficiently. Out of the room, down a service stairwell, through corridors Kwon's people had mapped in advance. Emily moved on autopilot, numb with shock and adrenaline crash. She'd just killed someone. Murdered him in cold blood. Become exactly what she'd always sworn she'd never be. By the time they reached the waiting car, sirens were already wailing in the distance. The driver pulled away calmly, navigating through Lagos traffic like nothing unusual had happened. Maybe in the city, nothing was unusual. They drove in silence until they reached a safe house, a modest apartment in Acadia that Kwon's people maintained. Only when they were inside, door locked alone, did Emily finally break. She sank to the floor and sobbed. Great, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere deep and raw. Kwon sat beside her, pulled her against his chest, and held her while she cried for Samuel, for herself, for the innocents she'd just murdered along with Chen Wei. It doesn't feel like justice, she choked out. I thought it would feel like justice, but it just feels empty. I know, Kwon said quietly. Revenge always does. That's why I stopped seeking it years ago. Now I just remove problems efficiently and try not to think about whether it makes things better. Does it? Emily asked. Make things better? No, Kwon admitted. But it makes things simpler. And sometimes that's enough. They sat together on the floor of a safe house in Lagos, the crime lord and the woman who'd just become a killer, holding on to each other like they were the only solid things in a world that kept shifting beneath them. What happens now? Emily finally asked, pulling back to look at Kwon's face. Chen Wei is dead. Your name is cleared. I got my revenge. What happens to me? Kwon studied her with those dark, calculating eyes. That depends. What do you want to happen? I don't know, Emily admitted. I spent 3 months with one goal: destroy the person who killed Samuel. Now that goal is gone and I have no idea what comes next. I have no money, no home to go back to, no purpose. I'm just empty. You could stay, Kwon said carefully. With me. In Seoul. I could use someone like you, smart, capable, dangerous when necessary. Someone who understands grief and revenge and the cost of both. Someone who won't judge me for what I am because you've seen that darkness in yourself now too. Emily's breath caught. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a place, Kwon corrected. A purpose. A reason to wake up that isn't just survival. You'd be my partner in the legitimate parts of my business, security consulting, risk assessment, the things you're already good at. But also, he paused, something vulnerable in his expression, also just someone to exist with. Someone who understands what it's like to carry the weight I carry. You barely know me, Emily protested. We met 4 days ago when I broke into your house. You're really offering me a place in your life based on 4 days. I've known you longer than 4 days, Kwon said. I've known you since I saw the security footage of you scaling my wall, determined, skilled, absolutely fearless. I've known you since you looked me in the eye and confessed you planned to destroy me. I've known you since I watched you pull that trigger tonight and become someone new. 4 days is plenty of time to recognize someone extraordinary. Emily felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen since Samuel died. I killed someone tonight. I'm a murderer now. Just like you. Yes, Kwon said simply. Does that terrify you? Knowing you're capable of it? No, Emily admitted, and the honesty surprised her. That's what terrifies me. That it doesn't terrify me. That some part of me feels satisfied. Like I finally balanced the scales. Then you understand, Kwon said. You understand what it means to live in this world I inhabit. Most people don't. They judge from a distance, call us monsters, pretend they're different. But you've crossed that line now. You can't uncross it. So the question becomes, what do you do with who you've become? Emily looked at him, really looked at him. Kwon Jun-seok, the White Lotus, Seoul's most dangerous man. But also, Kwon Jun-seok, who'd dropped everything to help her find her brother's real killer. Who'd flown across the world to support her revenge. Who'd held her while she cried and didn't try to fix her or tell her it would be okay. Who understood darkness because he lived in it every day. If I stay, she said slowly, if I come back to Seoul with you, I need to know this isn't just about using me. That you're not collecting me like some broken weapon for your arsenal. I have plenty of weapons, Kwon said. What I don't have is someone who looks at me and sees past the monster everyone expects. Someone who challenges me. Someone who makes me want to be something other than what I am. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I'm offering you a partnership, Emily. Not captivity. Not employment. Partnership. We build something together that neither of us could build alone. What kind of something? Emily whispered. I don't know yet, Kwon admitted. But I want to find out. With you. The kiss happened without either of them deciding it would. One moment they were staring at each other, the next his lips were on hers, and she was kissing him back with desperate intensity. It tasted like grief and revenge, and the beginning of something that would probably destroy them both, but felt inevitable anyway. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kwon rested his forehead against hers. Come back to Seoul with me. Not as my prisoner. Not as my employee. As my partner. My equal. We'll figure out what that means together. Emily should have said no. Should have walked away from this dangerous man and his dangerous world and tried to salvage some kind of normal life. But normal had died the night Samuel did. And Kwon was offering her something she'd never had before, someone who understood the darkness inside her and wasn't afraid of it. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll come back to Seoul with you. Kwon smiled, that devastating smile that made him look almost human. Then let's get out of Lagos before the authorities connect us to Chinwe's death. They left Nigeria that night, flying back to Seoul as the sun rose over Africa. Emily watched Lagos disappear below them and felt like she was leaving behind more than just a city. She was leaving behind Emily Johnson, the engineering student's sister. Emily Johnson, who'd never hurt anyone. Emily Johnson, who believed in justice and law and playing by rules. That Emily had died in a Victoria Island hotel room along with Chen Wei. The Emily boarding this plane to Seoul was something new. Something harder. Something capable of murder and partnership with criminals and walking away from everything she'd been towards something she couldn't quite define yet. Regrets? Kwon asked, reading her expression. Too many to count, Emily said. But not about this. Not about you. They landed in Seoul as winter deepened, the city covered in fresh snow that made everything look clean despite all the dirt beneath. Kwon's driver met them at the airport, and the ride back to his estate felt different than the first time Emily had seen it. Then she'd been a prisoner. Now she was what? Partner. Guest. Something more complicated than either word could capture. Mrs. Cho met them at the door, her expression carefully neutral as always. Welcome back, Mr. Kwon. Miss Johnson. Your rooms are ready. Thank you, Mrs. Cho, Kwon said. Then, to Emily's surprise, Emily will be staying in the main house now. Not the guest wing. The room next to mine, the one with the better view. Mrs. Cho's eyebrows rose fractionally, the most emotion Emily had ever seen from her. Of course, Mr. Kwon. I'll have her things moved immediately. After she left, Emily looked at Kwon questioningly. Room next to yours? I told you, Kwon said. Partners. Equals. That means you're part of my life, not just visiting it. The room next to mine is for people I trust. People I want close. You're the first person in 5 years I've trusted enough to give that room to. Something warm bloomed in Emily's chest. What happened 5 years ago? Kwon's expression shuddered. I'll tell you that story someday. When you're ready to hear it. For now, he gestured toward the stairs. Rest. Tomorrow we start building whatever this partnership becomes. Tonight, just sleep. You've earned it. Emily climbed the stairs, exhausted but wired, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. 4 days ago, she'd broken into this house planning to destroy Kwon Jun-seok. Now she was moving into the room next to his, becoming his partner, stepping into a life she'd never imagined. The room Mrs. Cho showed her to was stunning, larger than the guest suite, decorated in dark woods and soft fabrics, with windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. And on the nightstand, Emily noticed, was a framed photograph she'd mentioned to Kwon days ago, her and Samuel at his university graduation, both smiling like the future was something to look forward to. She picked up the photo, her throat tight. Kwon must have had his people find it, print it, frame it. A gesture that was thoughtful and unsettling and perfectly characteristic of a man who could be terrifyingly ruthless and surprisingly gentle in the same breath. Emily set the photo down and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. She'd killed a man tonight. Watched the life drain from his eyes. Felt nothing but cold satisfaction. What did that make her? A knock on her door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Come in, she called. Kwon entered, changed into comfortable clothes, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Couldn't sleep either? Too much adrenaline, Emily admitted. My brain won't shut off. Mine either. He sat on the edge of her bed, and Emily was struck by how natural it felt, this intimacy between them, this easy closeness that shouldn't exist between people who'd known each other less than a week. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For trusting me. For coming back here. For being willing to build something with me despite having every reason not to. He looked at her, and his eyes held something Emily couldn't quite name, vulnerability, maybe, or hope, or the beginning of something that terrified him as much as it terrified her. I've spent years alone at the top. Building walls. Keeping everyone at a distance. You're the first person who's made me want to lower those walls. I'm not sure that's wise, Emily said. I'm probably the least stable person you could choose to trust right now. Probably, Kwon agreed. But stability is overrated. I'd rather have someone real and messy and dangerous than someone safe and boring who never challenges me. I'll definitely challenge you, Emily warned. I don't know how to be anything but difficult. Kwon laughed, that genuine sound Emily was learning to love. Good. I'm counting on it. He stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. Tomorrow, when we start working together, I need you to know you can say no to me. You can disagree. You can tell me when I'm wrong. This partnership only works if you're willing to check my worst instincts. Can you do that? Emily thought about the man who'd dropped everything to help her, who'd traveled across the world for her revenge, who'd given her the photo of Samuel without being asked. Yes, she said. I can do that. But you have to promise me something too. What? Promise you'll tell me the truth. Always. Even when it's ugly. Even when it's easier to lie. I've had enough of people using me, manipulating me, treating me like a pawn. If we're partners, we're honest partners. Deal? Deal, Kwon said immediately. Then he leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gesture that was tender and protective and made Emily's heart stutter. Good night, Emily Johnson. Welcome to your new life. After he left, Emily lay in the darkness and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. The grief of losing Samuel. The satisfaction of avenging him. The terror of having killed someone. The confusion of falling for a man who should be her enemy. The strange, unexpected hope that maybe she could build something new from the ashes of everything she'd lost. Outside, Seoul glittered like a promise or a threat. Inside, Emily Johnson closed her eyes and let herself imagine a future that didn't revolve around revenge. A future where she was more than Samuel's grieving sister. A future where she was Kwon's partner, his equal, his. She didn't let herself finish that thought. It was too soon. Too dangerous. Too much. But lying in the darkness of her new room in the White Lotus's house, Emily allowed herself a small smile. For days ago she'd broken into this estate planning to destroy its owner. Now she was sleeping down the hall from him, planning to build something with him, stepping into a life she'd never expected but somehow felt inevitable. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was probably a terrible idea. But Emily Johnson had never been good at playing it safe. And starting tomorrow, she'd stop pretending she wanted to. The morning came too soon, pale winter light filtering through windows Emily had forgotten to close. She woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was, then remembering everything in a rush. Seoul, Kwon, Chinwei's death, the choice she'd made to stay. Mrs. Cho appeared with breakfast and an expectant expression. Mr. Kwon is waiting in his office. He says when you're ready, you should join him. There are things to discuss. Emily dressed quickly, her hands shaking slightly. Today was the first day of her new life. Today she'd start figuring out what it meant to be Kwon Jun-seok's partner. Today everything changed. She found him in his study, the same room where he'd caught her on Christmas Eve, though it felt like years ago instead of days. He was at his desk, reviewing papers, and when he looked up at her entrance, his expression was all business. "Good morning," he said. "Sleep well?" "Not really," Emily admitted. "You?" "About as well as expected for someone who just helped commit murder in another country." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. We need to talk about what happens next." Emily sat, her stomach twisting with anxiety. This was the moment of truth, when she'd find out if Kwon's promises were real or just manipulation to keep her compliant. "I've been thinking about your role here," Kwon began, and Emily's heart sank. Here it came, the reveal that she was just another employee after all, just another asset to be used. But then he continued, "I want you to run the legitimate side of my security operations. You're brilliant at spotting vulnerabilities, at thinking like someone trying to break in. That's exactly what I need for my actual businesses, someone who can identify weaknesses before enemies exploit them." "You're serious," Emily said. "You actually want me to run part of your business?" "I don't say things I don't mean," Kwon replied. "You'll have full authority over security protocols, hiring, operations. You'll answer to no one but me, and even then only as a partner would, with the expectation that you'll tell me when I'm wrong about something." He slid a folder across the desk. "This is your contract. Full partnership stakes, profit sharing, decision-making power. Read it. Take your time. If there's anything you want changed, we negotiate." Emily opened the folder with trembling hands. The contract was everything he'd promised and more. She'd be rich. Actually, genuinely wealthy. She'd have power, authority, a purpose that went beyond revenge. "Why?" she asked, looking up at him. "Why give me all this? You could hire anyone to run security. Why make me an actual partner?" Kwon was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. "Because 4 days ago, a woman climbed over my wall and broke into my house, and instead of begging for her life or trying to manipulate me, she looked me in the eye and told me exactly what she planned to do to me. That kind of honesty is rare in my world. That kind of courage is priceless. And when I saw you pull that trigger in Lagos, not hesitating, not flinching, doing what needed to be done, I knew you were someone who could walk in my world without losing yourself completely." He stood and came around the desk, leaning against it to look at her directly. "I need someone who understands darkness, but isn't consumed by it. Someone who'll challenge my decisions when they're wrong. Someone who's dangerous enough to survive beside me, but human enough to remind me what I'm supposed to be protecting. You're all of that, Emily. So yes, I'm giving you power and wealth and partnership. Because I think together we can build something that's more than just survival. Maybe something that actually matters. Emily's throat was tight with emotion she didn't know how to name. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm who you think I am. You are, Kwon said with certainty. You just don't know it yet. But you will. He extended his hand. So, what do you say, Emily Johnson? Are you ready to be my partner? Are you ready to build something dangerous and beautiful and completely unprecedented? Emily looked at his hand, offered freely, without coercion, a genuine partnership from a man who didn't need partners. She thought about Samuel, about what he'd want for her. Not revenge. Not grief. But life. Purpose. Something worth building. She took Kwon's hand. Yes, she said. I'm ready. Let's build something unprecedented. Kwon's smile was brilliant. Good. Because I should probably tell you. The door exploded inward. Men flooded the room, armed, professional, moving with military precision. Emily jumped up, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon she didn't have. Kwon moved in front of her, his body a shield, his expression transforming into something coldly lethal. Stay behind me, he ordered. But Emily could already count the attackers, 8 men, all carrying weapons, all focused on Kwon. This wasn't a random attack. This was coordinated, planned, professional. The leaders stepped forward, and Emily's blood ran cold. She recognized him from the files they'd reviewed, one of Chin-wei's business partners. A man named Park Jin-woo who'd been in Seoul when Chin-wei died, who'd have every reason to want revenge. White Lotus, Park said in Korean-accented English. You killed my partner. You flew to Lagos and murdered him like he was nothing. Now I return the favor. Chin-wei killed an innocent student to frame me, Kwon said, his voice deadly calm. He earned what happened to him. I don't care about your justifications, Park replied. I care about the fact that you've disrupted business, killed my partner, and made yourself a problem. So now you die. And the girl too, since she pulled the trigger. Emily's mind raced. 8 armed men. No weapons. No backup. They were trapped. But Kwon laughed, actually laughed. You think you're the first person to break into my house with murder on your mind? You're not even the first this week. He glanced back at Emily with something that looked like pride. Tell him what happened to the last person who tried this. Emily understood what he was asking. He was giving her a choice, cower behind him or stand beside him as an equal. She stepped out from behind Kwon, squared her shoulders, and met Park's eyes. The last person who broke into this house was me, she said clearly. I came here to kill the White Lotus for a crime he didn't commit. I was angry and grieving and absolutely certain I was right. But instead of killing me, he showed me the truth. Helped me find real justice. Became my partner. So if you're here for revenge, I understand. I've walked that road. But I'm telling you, you're making a mistake. Park's expression twisted with contempt. You think your little speech matters? You think I care about your redemption story? You're both dead. My men will. He never finished the sentence. Because Kwon moved. What happened next was brutal and efficient. Kwon grabbed the nearest attacker's weapon, used it to take down 3 men in seconds. Emily dove for a fallen gun, came up shooting with precision that surprised even her. Apparently growing up in Lagos had taught her more about firearms than she'd realized. The room exploded into chaos. Gunfire, shouting, bodies hitting the floor. Emily took down 2 attackers, her hands steady, her mind clear. She was surviving. Fighting. Being exactly who Kwon had said she was, dangerous enough to stand beside him. When the smoke cleared, 6 men were down. Park and 1 guard remained standing, both looking considerably less confident than they'd been 30 seconds ago. Last chance, Kwon said, his gun trained on Park's head. Leave Seoul. Tonight. Never come back. Or stay and die. Your choice. Park looked at the bodies of his men, at Emily standing shoulder to shoulder with Kwon, both of them covered in other people's blood, but very much alive. He saw what he was up against, not just the White Lotus, but the White Lotus with a partner who was just as dangerous. This isn't over, Park said, backing toward the destroyed door. Yes, it is, Emily said coldly. She raised her gun, and Park's eyes went wide. You came into this house to kill us. We defended ourselves. No one will question what happens next. So run. Run fast and run far, and never let me hear your name again. Because next time, I won't give you a warning. Park ran. His surviving guard ran with him. And Emily stood in Kwon's destroyed study, covered in blood and cordite, her hand still steady on the gun, feeling absolutely alive for the first time since Samuel died. Kwon looked at her with something that might have been awe. You just faced down 8 armed men without flinching. I had you, Emily said simply. We're partners. That means we face things together. Kwon crossed to her, cupped her face in his bloody hands, and kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Emily kissed him back with equal intensity, tasting violence and survival and the beginning of something that was probably love, but neither of them was ready to name. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kwon's eyes held something Emily had never seen before: vulnerability, hope, the kind of raw emotion he usually kept locked away. I'm falling in love with you, he said bluntly. I know it's too soon. I know it's inappropriate given the circumstances. I know you just became my partner 5 minutes ago, and I probably shouldn't say this. But after what just happened, after watching you stand beside me and fight like you were born to it, I can't not say it. I'm falling in love with you, Emily Johnson. And I don't know what to do with that. Emily should have been terrified. Should have pulled away, established boundaries, reminded him they barely knew each other. But standing in his destroyed study, covered in evidence of violence they'd survived together, she felt something click into place, some puzzle piece she hadn't known was missing. I'm falling for you too, she admitted. And it's terrifying and probably a terrible idea and definitely too fast. But it's true. You saw the worst of me, the revenge-obsessed, murder-capable worst, and you didn't flinch. You gave me partnership when you could have given me death. You made me feel like I could be something other than Samuel's grieving sister. So yes, I'm falling for you. And I don't know what to do with that either. We figure it out together, Kwon said. That's what partners do. Together, Emily agreed. They stood in the wreckage of the attack, holding each other, both damaged and dangerous and somehow finding something like hope in the chaos. Outside, Seoul continued its relentless rhythm. Inside, the White Lotus and the woman who'd tried to destroy him were building something that defied every rule both of them had ever lived by. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be safe. But it would be theirs. And that, Emily thought as she held on to Kwon and felt his heartbeat steady against hers, was enough. For now, it was enough. 3 days later, Emily woke in her own bed to find Kwon already gone. Early meeting, Mrs. Cho explained, but he'd left a note. Emily unfolded it, smiling at his precise handwriting. Partner meeting at noon. Security briefing at 2. Dinner at 7, just us. We need to talk about what happened. What we said. What comes next. Don't overthink it. Just show up. 'Kay. Emily dressed carefully, her new clothes feeling foreign but expensive. She was learning to navigate this world, Kwon's world, where wealth and danger mixed into something intoxicating. She'd spent the last 3 days studying his businesses, meeting his people, establishing her authority as his new partner. Some of them respected her immediately. Others would need convincing. She was ready to convince them. The day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. Emily discovered she was good at this: security assessment, risk management, reading people's intentions. Kwon watched her work with obvious pride, occasionally stepping in to support but mostly letting her lead. By the time 7 p.m. arrived, Emily was exhausted but exhilarated. She'd survived her first real days as Kwon's partner. She'd earned respect from people who'd been skeptical. She'd started building something real. She found Kwon in the private dining room, a small intimate space she'd never seen before. He'd set the table himself, candles, wine, food from the best restaurant in Seoul. It was romantic and thoughtful and completely unexpected from a man known for ruthless efficiency. "Hi," she said, suddenly nervous. "Hi," Kwon replied, and his smile was warm. "Sit. We need to talk." Emily sat, her heart pounding. Here it came, the conversation about what they'd said in the heat of the moment, about whether those confessions were real or just adrenaline talking. I meant what I said, Kwon began without preamble. About falling for you. It wasn't just the attack, wasn't just adrenaline. I've been falling since the moment you looked me in the eye and told me you planned to destroy me. I just didn't have a name for it until that moment in my study. I meant it too, Emily said. But Kwon, we've known each other a week. Is that really enough time to know if this is real? I don't know, Kwon admitted. I've never felt like this before. Never wanted to. It's terrifying and exhilarating, and I have no idea what I'm doing. But I know I don't want to walk away from it. From you. So I'm asking, can we try? Can we see if this thing between us is real, or just trauma bonding, or something we'll regret in 6 months? Emily looked at him across the candlelit table. This dangerous man who'd become her partner, her protector, maybe her future. Yes, she said. We can try. But slowly. We take this slow and we're honest and we don't make promises we can't keep. Deal? Deal, Kwon agreed. They ate dinner and talked about everything, her plans for his security operations, his concerns about rivals, their shared grief over lost siblings, their hopes for what they might build together. It was intimate and honest and terrifying in the best way. As the night deepened and the candles burned low, Kwon walked Emily back to her room. They paused outside her door, the hallway quiet except for their breathing. Thank you, Emily said softly. For everything. For believing me, helping me, giving me this chance. Thank you, Kwon replied, for climbing my wall on Christmas Eve and breaking into my life. Best gift I ever received. He kissed her goodnight, slow and sweet and full of promise. Then he pulled back, squeezed her hand once, and headed to his own room next door. Emily went inside, closed her door, and leaned against it with a smile she couldn't suppress. 1 week ago she'd been broken and angry and planning murder. Now she was building something. With someone. For the first time since Samuel died, she had a future to look forward to. But as she changed for bed, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Emily opened it, and her blood ran cold. It was a photograph. Of her and Kwon at dinner tonight. Taken from outside the window. Someone had been watching them. Below the photo, a message in English. Chin-wei sends his regards from hell. You killed his body, but his network survives. We're coming for you both. Enjoy your partnership while it lasts. It won't be long. Emily's hands shook as she screenshot the message and texted it to Kwon. His response came immediately. Come to my room. Now. We need to talk. She ran down the hall, burst into his room without knocking. Kwon was already at his laptop, pulling up security feeds, his expression grim. I've been tracking chatter since we got back from Lagos, he said. I didn't want to worry you until I was sure, but Emily, Chin-wei had partners. People who've been using his death to consolidate power. They're building something. And they're using us as the foundation, painting us as the villains who need to be eliminated. How many? Emily asked, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. At least 20 organizations across 3 continents, Kwon said. All coordinating. All focused on destroying the White Lotus and his new partner. They see us as a threat, a new power structure that could disrupt their operations. They want us gone before we become unstoppable. Emily sank into the chair beside him, her mind racing. So, what do we do? We prepare, Kwon said, his voice hard. We fortify. We make this house into a fortress, and we don't leave until we're ready to take the fight to them. He turned to look at her, and his eyes held something fierce. But, Emily, I need to know you're all in. This isn't just partnership anymore. This is war. These people will come for us with everything they have. They'll be ruthless and creative and absolutely committed to seeing us destroyed. If you want out, now is the time. I'll get you somewhere safe, set you up with a new identity, make sure you're protected. But if you stay, I stay, Emily interrupted. I'm not running. Not from this. Not from you. We're partners, remember? That means we face everything together. Including war. Kwon's expression softened with something that looked like relief and love and terror all mixed together. You're sure? Because once we commit to this path, there's no going back. We'll be targets for the rest of our lives. We'll always be looking over our shoulders. Emily grabbed his face and kissed him, hard and desperate and absolutely certain. When she pulled back, her voice was steel. I'm sure. I chose this life when I climbed your wall. I chose you when I came back to Seoul. I chose us when I stood beside you during that attack. So stop giving me outs and start telling me the plan. How do we survive this? Kwon stared at her for a long moment, and then his expression transformed into something predatory and determined. We survive by becoming what they fear most. We don't just defend, we attack. We identify every organization coming for us, and we dismantle them one by one. We use every resource I have, every skill you have, and we show them what happens when people try to destroy the White Lotus and his partner. When do we start? Emily asked. Now, Kwon said, pulling up more files on his laptop. We start right now. They worked through the night, planning strategies, identifying targets, preparing for the war that was coming. And as dawn broke over Seoul, Emily Johnson stood beside Kwon Jun-seok and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Not revenge this time, but something cleaner. The purpose of building something worth protecting. The purpose of standing beside someone worth fighting for. The purpose of becoming someone strong enough to face anything. Outside the window, Seoul woke to a new day, unaware that in a fortress in Hanam-dong, two of the most dangerous people in the world were plotting the downfall of everyone foolish enough to threaten them. Emily's phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. We're watching. We're waiting. We're coming. Enjoy your last days together. Emily showed it to Kwon. He read it, then smiled, that sharp, dangerous smile that reminded her exactly who he was. Let them come, he said. Let them watch. Let them see what they're up against. He pulled Emily close, kissed her temple, and looked out at the city below. They wanted a war? They're about to get one they'll never forget. Emily leaned into him, her hand finding his, their fingers intertwining. 1 week ago she'd been alone and grieving and planning to destroy this man. Now she was standing beside him, preparing to face an army of enemies, building a partnership that defied logic and probably wouldn't survive, but felt inevitable anyway. Partners? She asked softly. Partners, Kwon confirmed. Until the end. Whatever that end looks like. Outside, somewhere in Seoul, their enemies were planning. Coordinating. Preparing to strike. But inside Kwon's fortress, the White Lotus and the woman who'd tried to destroy him were preparing too. And when the war finally came, when 20 organizations tried to eliminate them, they'd discover that some partnerships were forged in fire and couldn't be broken by anything less than death itself. Emily looked at the threatening message on her phone one more time, then at Kwon's determined face, then out at Seoul spreading beneath them like a battlefield waiting to ignite. Let them come, she echoed, her voice steady and sure. We'll be ready. And in that moment, standing in the growing light of a Seoul morning with war on the horizon and a dangerous man's hand in hers, Emily Johnson knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. She'd climbed the White Lotus's wall seeking revenge. She'd stayed to build something worth dying for. And whatever came next, whatever enemies emerged from the shadows, whatever battles they'd have to fight, whatever the cost of choosing this partnership, she was ready. They both were. The war was coming. Let it come. Thanks for staying till the end. Kindly like, share, and subscribe to get more interesting stories.